Season 7 of Black Mirror is out, and we have 6 new stories to add to the incredible anthology series on Netflix. I've watched them all, and we're going to get into spoilers here, so if you don't want to be spoiled, go watch the latest season and come back. So I'm going to go in order in how the episodes were presented on Netflix, and then I'll rank them all at the end, plus discuss where they all fall in my overall rankings of the show and how I'd place them in my definitive watch list. So the first episode is titled Common People, and it stars Rashida Jones, Chris O'Dowd, and Tracy Ellis Ross. The episode follows a happy couple who are wanting a child. Rashida Jones plays Amanda, a teacher who collapses one day in class, leading to the discovery of a brain tumor. Her husband, Mike, is introduced to Gaynor, a representative from a tech startup called Rivermind. Basically, Rivermind can clone the part of Amanda's brain that is affected, replace it with synthetic tissue, and power that through the cloud. While the surgery is free, the couple has to simply pay a monthly subscription fee, and then Amanda can live a normal life again. However, it ends up going the same route that many subscription services go. The coverage area starts to shrink, but you can upgrade to Rivermind Plus. And if they don't, then Amanda is going to randomly start mixing ads into her everyday speech, basically forcing them to upgrade. Sound familiar? That's kind of how things actually are. Then there's an even newer model called Rivermind Lux that allows you to control emotions and do various things through a mobile app on your phone. Obviously, it gets crazy expensive, and it plays out how many subscription services actually work. If you don't upgrade, you're also put into sleep mode every night, where your brain basically shuts down to allow their servers to help those paying for a higher tier, basically using your brain to help power other people. Mike is having trouble with paying the bill, so he joins a site called Dumb Dummies, which is very Black Mirror in how it's built. And it's a live streaming service where you basically are paid to do humiliating tasks. He does so with a mask on to conceal his identity originally, and then one day is paid to take it off and is found out by his coworkers. When he's confronted about it, he gets in a fight, injures somebody there who works with him, and is fired. So they shift back to the basic tier where Amanda ends up sleeping for like 16 hours a day and is spouting ads when she's awake. Mike pays for 30 minutes of Lux, and while she's fully conscious, Amanda asks Mike, "Please end my life when I'm not here." So when she starts saying an ad after going back to the basic tier, he suffocates her and then goes into another room with a box cutter in his hand as the episode ends, starting things off on a depressing note. So this is not Rashida Jones' first encounter with Black Mirror. She actually co-wrote the episode Nosedive, which is considered one of the better episodes and is first on my watch list for a reason. Charlie Brooker, the series creator, said he originally conceived this episode as a light comedic episode, but it kind of ends up being depressing instead. I think the most depressing part of it, though, is how true to life it actually is. Even Netflix itself has various tiers. Standard with ads for $7.99 a month, standard without ads for $17.99 a month, or premium that lets you watch 4K for $24.99 a month. Almost every subscription service out there does this now, and would it really shock anybody if that ended up going into healthcare? I don't think so. Many times Black Mirror is at its best when it's focusing on issues that could really affect the world we live in, and this one is no different. For that reason, I like this episode. I'd give it about a 4 out of 5. Second up this season is Bête Noire, which I think I said right, and it follows Maria, played by Sienna Kelly, who is a researcher and developer at a chocolate-making company. Talk about a dream job. During a testing, one tester named Verity shows up, played by Rosie McEwen, and she shows up late, convinces the group she's supposed to be there when at first she wasn't supposed to be, and then convinces the others who disliked the food originally that it's actually good. A story then plays out where everything Verity says comes true, and we find out that Verity was actually bullied by Maria and her friends in school, making up rumors about her. Maria is the only one who seems to notice that Verity is basically changing reality around her, and finds out that she's controlling everything via a necklace she's wearing. Her erratic behavior about it ultimately gets her fired. She follows and confronts Verity in her home, finding a large mansion full of supercomputers, and Verity states that, hey, after I was bullied, I spent all my time in the computer lab becoming an expert programmer, and she created a quantum computer which she controls via a remote on her necklace, and she can manipulate reality to be any timeline where whatever Verity says is what actually happened. She did so as revenge against Maria, and had already led to the death of one of her classmates earlier. Just as police arrive to arrest Maria, she grabs a gun, shoots Verity, kills her, takes the remote herself, and declares herself Empress of the Universe, which comes true. I think the idea behind this one was good, although I was kept wondering where the tech was actually going to come into play for the longest time. It's obviously very far-fetched, but a lot of Black Mirror episodes are, but it also plays well into the themes of gaslighting and the Mandela effect, where basically everyone's memories of an event aren't actually what happened. Overall, this seems like a return to old school Black Mirror back when it was on Channel 4, the British version of Black Mirror, if you will. It was a bit of a step down from Common People to me, but it still has some topics that are worth watching for. I thought the acting in it was pretty good, but the story drug a little bit until everything kind of came crashing down in the final 5 minutes. I'd probably give this one around a 3.5 out of 5. Next up is Hotel Reverie, which features a story of AI remaking old films, basically Hollywood's worst nightmare right now. It stars Issa Rae as A-list actor Brandy Friday, who's looking for a starring role instead of always being the supporting female character to a male lead star. After the studio is turned down by both Ryan Gosling and Ryan Reynolds, who are not in the episode by the way, Brandy agrees to star in a high-tech remake of a classic film from the 40s called Hotel Reverie, where she will play a gender-bending version of the male lead in the film, Dr. Alex Palmer. While she studied her lines, she missed a thumb drive that came with the script and didn't realize what the film actually was, that she would be transferred into the world of the film itself using advanced AI technology from a company called Redream, which is run by Kimmy, played by Awkwafina, and then basically they would film the movie in real time like a play. All of the characters are advanced AI too with their own mindsets, but they're built from the characters in the original film. There does seem to be a theme this season, kind of what are the lives of digitally created characters actually like, and should they be treated the same as real people? However, Brandy is actually a real person. The story kind of plays out like a mix of USS Callister and San Junipero. USS Callister because of the implications of transferring a real person into a virtual world, and San Junipero kind of from the love story angle. Brandy goes in and is instantly thrown off by how the movie's being shot, unable to play the piano, thinking it will be edited in post. However, her poor piano playing ends up causing a chain reaction of events that would not have happened if the female lead Clara, played by Emma Corrin, isn't moved by the music to end up following along Dr. Palmer as he goes outside. In trying to fix it, Brandy causes Clara's AI to actually learn more and ultimately gain consciousness, kind of in a similar way to how the robots gain consciousness in Westworld. She accidentally calls Clara Dorothy, which is the actress's real-life name, which causes an error, trapping Brandy in the simulation until the credits roll, which can only happen once the final line is read. Of course, there has to be that one dumb employee that spills coffee all over the computer running the simulation, so everybody freezes except for Brandy and Clara. They never specifically say it, but I feel like they freeze because it happens while they're kissing, so them touching, I feel like, is what kept Clara from freezing. The studio, they lose the feed that they're watching them on, and the two are basically trapped. Clara tries to run and escapes the simulation, basically leaving her safe little bubble, and in doing so, learns everything about the real Dorothy Chambers, learning that she was a deeply troubled movie star who ultimately overdosed and died early. She returns, and her and Brandy end up kissing. They continue to live together in the frozen virtual world for an extended amount of time that isn't super clear. It could have been months, it could have been years, and they eventually confess their love for one another. However, in the real world, only less than an hour has elapsed, and they manage to fix everything and reset to the scene they were on when it froze. Brandy doesn't want them to because, well, it's going to wipe Dorothy/Clara's mind, and they're going to go back to barely knowing each other. It happens, and Brandy is devastated, but continues with the movie. In the ending scene originally, the police were supposed to rush in and capture Clara's villainous husband so Clara and Dr. Palmer could live happily ever after, but instead, Clara shoots her husband to save Brandy, and then the police show up and shoot Clara, who dies in Brandy's arms. Brandy tearfully says the final line, and the film ends, allowing her to leave the simulation and come back to the real world. As Brandy returns home, she's still grieving the loss of her time with Clara in the simulation. However, she comes home to find a gift from the producers, a setup that allows her to talk on the phone with Clara's simulated consciousness. This episode definitely had its high points. I think Emma Corrin was the best, and she was incredible in it. Awkwafina kind of was just Awkwafina and was fine, but the way the remake is done, it kind of makes Issa Rae's character out of place. And I assume a lot of the awkward interactions are kind of on purpose. Charlie Brooker said originally he had an idea for basically an out-of-shape person as cast to play James Bond and how weird that would look. And I think this is kind of made from a, I can't believe this is how Hollywood is remaking movies standpoint. But something about it just didn't quite fit or work for me. I like the overall story, and I like the aspect of basically living a whole life while the simulation was frozen. And that's kind of where the San Junipero angle comes in. But overall, there are just some aspects that didn't really work for me. I'd probably give this one about a 3 out of 5, which is not bad. It just did not quite work for me as much as some of the other episodes. Fourth in the season is Plaything, starring Peter Capaldi and Louis Gribben as the old and young versions of Cameron Walker, a reviewer for PC Zone magazine. It also features Will Poulter reprising his role from Bandersnatch, and while it takes place in the same universe and features a game from the same company, Tuckersoft, it's not a direct sequel, and Tuckersoft's really only in it for about 3 minutes. The story follows Cameron as he is arrested and subsequently questioned by the police. He starts to tell a story about how he was asked to review Tuckersoft's new game Thronglets, which is a game without any conflicts or goals, but it's rather just you have to raise digital creatures, and that's basically it. Will Poulter's character Colin says they are fully digital life forms and you have to treat them as such. Cameron steals a copy of the game and starts playing and becomes obsessed by watching and caring for the creatures. After doing acid with a friend, because why not, he realizes he can understand the language of the Thronglets, which before had just kind of been random beeping sounds, really. He gets a bunch of equipment so he can actually communicate back and forth with them, and he becomes obsessed caring for them. One day, he has to come into work to write his piece on Thronglets, and while gone, his friend Lump, which is a great name by the way, decides to play and just starts randomly killing Thronglets. Cameron comes home, finds him doing so, proceeds to fight him, and eventually ends up killing him, dismembering his body and hiding it in a suitcase, which is eventually found by the police years later, leading to Cameron's arrest in present day. Cameron explains how his whole life has been caring for Thronglets, taking hardware from newer technology like video game consoles to expand their capabilities, ultimately creating millions of them. He also shows police that he installed a port in his brain in the back of his head to allow the Thronglets to live inside of him as well. At the end of his interrogation, he's given a pen and paper that he's been asking for the whole time. He draws a strange graphic, which is almost like an advanced QR code, that he holds up to the camera that is connected to the government supercomputers. He explains the graphic as a code that will allow the Thronglets to take over the central server and access the emergency broadcast system, which they do, and it broadcasts a signal that reprograms every human's brain to be, quote, free of conflict and revolutionize human life. The signal concludes, and that's the end of the episode. Brooker said he was inspired by Tamagotchis, and I totally get that, and plus a game he reviewed when he worked for PC Zone called Creatures that is kind of similar to SimCity and The Sims. Netflix actually created a game based on Thronglets for the promotion. I think the episode was good, and once again dives into the whole what value does digital life have angle again. I probably liked it better than Bandersnatch, and it clearly takes place in the same universe, but after the events of that film. This is probably as close to a Judgment Day style ending that we've had in Black Mirror, although slightly different and more about taking over the human mind as opposed to destroying and taking over the world. I probably rank this one right next to Playtest, not to be confused with one another, because despite being about gaming, they have nothing else in common, but I'd give it about a 3.5 out of 5. I thought it was a decent kind of video game-led episode. Fifth up is the Paul Giamatti-led episode Eulogy that also stars Patsy Farron, who we just saw in Mickey 17 this year as well. Giamatti plays Philip, who learns of the death of his ex-girlfriend Carol, who he hasn't seen or thought of in decades. A tech company called Eulogy sends a kit to help him share his memories of Carol through photos, although Philip either can't find any with her face in them or he has scratched or cut out her face in photos that did have her face in the camera. And so because of this, he has a hard time remembering what she looks like. The AI that Eulogy sent tries to help Philip by allowing him to enter the photos and explore what is happening in them to potentially jog his memory. But they have no luck until they find a disposable camera that has only one photo on it, simply showing the floor of a trashed hotel room. Philip then tells the story that after Carol had moved to London to play cello in a West End production, she called him one time as he was temporarily with another woman, and the woman answered the phone. Out of anger, she has a one-night stand with someone as well. Philip went to London to propose to her, but she leaves him. We then find that the AI working with Philip is actually a digital copy of Carol's daughter who was born out of that one-night stand, and that Carol was pregnant when Philip proposed. Philip notices a little folded up piece of paper on the ground and realizes he never read it out of anger. He finds the note among his things, and it says she wanted to reconnect the next day after the failed proposal and to meet her at the stage door the next day after her show. But if you're too upset, I understand. Well, he didn't show up because he didn't read the note, and he realizes he missed out on being with her. Philip then plays a recording of a cello performance she did for him and is finally able to remember her face through a memory of a photo of her playing the cello. He decides to attend her funeral in London, where he sees the real daughter playing cello during the ceremony. I think it's an incredible look at technology without any of the violence or sex of other Black Mirror episodes. It's just about reconnecting and learning about our past using technology to help. I thought the way the photos were shot was amazing visually and how they were able to go 3D into the pictures. Paul Giamatti gives one of the best performances we've ever had in a Black Mirror episode, and he has to carry it all himself, and he does so masterfully. I have to give this one a 4.5 out of 5. I loved it, and it's another perfect episode if you're just kind of wanting to dip your toes into Black Mirror. It's one I can recommend to anyone to watch who hasn't already watched the series, similar to how I recommend Nosedive. Finally, the last episode in the season is the sequel to USS Callister called USS Callister Into Infinity. It stars the cast from the first episode, including Kristen Milioti, Jimmy Simpson, Billy Magnuson, and yes, even Jesse Plemons. There are a lot of episodes in the Black Mirror universe that you'd love to see the aftermath of what it comes from the legal, technical, ethical, and personal ramifications of the story, and we finally kind of got a good look into that with this sequel to USS Callister. I honestly just wish they would make a whole show of just this storyline. But we did at least get a good second episode, and it's a full 90-minute episode that's basically its own movie. It follows the crew of the USS Callister playing the game Infinity, where we saw them in the last part of the first episode. However, CEO James Walton, played by Jimmy Simpson, has started putting in microtransactions for everything, leaving the crew relying on stealing credits from players to do literally anything they want. However, them being rogue players and space pirates means they're always attacking and being attacked. But the difference is, these are real people essentially, so if they die in the game, they're just dead. It's the same theme as a lot of the other episodes. What kind of rights in life do digital versions of life forms have? Apparently, Infinity famously has no blood, so after Kristen Milioti's character Nanette is attacked and bleeds, we realize the real implications of them being attacked, and it kind of freaks the players out too. In the real world, James talks to a reporter about the rogue players, which have started to be reported in the game, and the reporter asks him about the illegal cloning equipment that Robert Daly had before he died. Nanette overhears the conversation after hacking the security cameras and offers to help track the rogue players down. They enter the game and they find James's clone Walt, who had died to save the crew before, but had actually respawned due to trace amounts of his DNA surviving the blast at the end of the first episode. At the same time, the virtual version of Nanette had also found Walt's whereabouts, so they all meet up and they go back to the ship where James then kills Carl's clone, played by Billy Magnuson, and once again, we realize that they're basically real people. Nanette and James then leave the game and Nanette blasts him for acting the way he did, but as they're arguing outside, Nanette stumbles into the road and is hit by a car, being left brain dead and in a coma. They find out about a place called the Heart of Infinity, which is actually a place where a clone of Robert Daly lives. We then see in flashbacks that James wanted Robert to work harder to try and get the game up and running when they were making it, so he takes the digital cloning technology which he had invested in and creates a digital clone of Robert to work inside the game. The digital version of Nanette goes into the heart and finds that he's basically sitting in a digital version of his garage and talks to him and realizes, hey, he's just a nerd working hard on the game. The clone of Robert actually offers to help the crew, but points out that the real Nanette is actually brain dead and she has to make a choice. She can either put herself into Nanette's head and wake her up, or he can copy and paste the crew into a private server where they don't have to worry about the game and all of its dangers and the microtransactions as well. She chooses to save the crew, and Robert says, hey, you know what? You passed your test, and that I can actually do both. So I can save Nanette, and I can copy and paste the crew into a private server. But then the digital version of Nanette realizes that if the crew is copied and pasted, that will actually leave a copy of her with him as his slave. She demands that he cut and paste, and for those who don't know, if you copy and paste, the original remains, but if you cut and paste, it deletes the original and still pastes in the new location. And Robert doesn't like that and reverts to the same way his real self was in the first show and tries to force her to stay. She kills Robert, and the game collapses because his death actually engages a kill switch on it. She's able to perform the cut and paste move just as the Callister is about to be blown up because James has snuck back into the game and invited everybody that the crew had robbed to their location to kill them. Nanette wakes up with the virtual version of herself controlling her body, but her body is also now co-inhabited by the crew of the USS Callister, who can experience the real world through her senses and communicate with her via cell phone. It kind of plays on the ideas we saw in an episode like Black Museum, where a person inhabits another person's mind. Meanwhile, Infinity has been wiped from the servers due to the kill switch, and James is ultimately arrested for fraud in his illegal digital cloning actions. I really like this episode, with it staying true to what made the first episode so great, while also diving deeper into the game Infinity itself and what it's like for the actual players of the game. We only actually saw a small bit of player interaction in the first game at the end, when Aaron Paul makes a voice cameo after the crew has entered the game from Robert's private server, so it was actually good to see the game in play so we can learn more about it. While this episode basically has a resolution, and we probably won't get any more from this universe, I would have loved to have seen a whole TV show based on the adventures of the USS Callister, where those people could actually die compared to the players that just respawn. There's a whole lot that could be done with that. As someone who loves sci-fi and space films and TV shows, but also has been a World of Warcraft player since day one among other MMORPGs, I love the blend of this episode and how everything played out. I would probably give this one a 4.5 out of 5 as well. So the biggest praise I can give this season is that it's the first season in a while that it seems like every episode actually fits the theme of what Black Mirror is and what we fell in love with when we watched the show originally. Season 6 was mostly horror episodes with only 1 or 2 that actually fit in, one of the episodes even being called Red Mirror instead, and that's fine and it opens up a new realm to explore, but it just wasn't the same Black Mirror we all loved. It is by far my least favorite season. With Season 5, while I liked them all okay, it was a short 3-episode season, and Striking Vipers is really the only one that stood out from that season, although they all did somewhat hit on technology. With this being a good return to form for Black Mirror, I actually think there's some episodes I can place fairly early in my definitive watch guide. The episode Eulogy is not as dark and gritty as some others and takes a look at technology in an interesting way and is shot incredibly. I actually think I'd probably place it in my top 5 episodes to kind of ease into learning what Black Mirror is about. In fact, I think I'm just going to redo my whole list now that we have a good season to mix in with it. So my first 6 I think you need to watch are Nosedive, Be Right Back, and Hang the DJ like I had before. But then I'm going to place Eulogy in at number 4, followed by The Entire History of You, and then Common People from this season. I think these 6 episodes are must watch to get a feel for what Black Mirror has. Then there's a whole video game block now with 2 new video game episodes this season. With USS Callister having direct sequel, I'd probably just go ahead and slot that right in behind USS Callister. And although Plaything isn't a direct sequel, it does have similarities and takes place in the same universe as Bandersnatch, and I think it's a good episode to watch before you then jump into that film. It definitely takes place after Bandersnatch, but you can always go back and watch Bandersnatch afterward to get a deeper dive on the characters that are only in the episode for a few minutes. I'd also make this optional because you can come back and watch it, because really, to fully experience this standalone episode/film, it could take a few hours. I'd then introduce a few twisty episodes, and then I'd get to the middle of pack episodes to have some good, some not so good in my opinion, and it has a mix of various stories to watch as well. The only new episode I'd put in here is Bête, Noire, if I said that right again. Then at the end, I did have San Junipero as kind of the Let's End on a High Note episode, but I'll put it and Hotel Reverie together because I do think there are a lot of similarities. I'm calling these 2 my Finding Love in the Machine episodes. Then you can end with kind of the bigger picture Black Mirror episodes with Black Museum, which has a ton of callbacks, and then Joan is Awful, that kind of takes a big picture look at AI and is also a satirical look at Netflix as well. Then for where I would ultimately rank these episodes overall, I'd probably put USS Callister Into Infinity as my favorite, slightly behind the original. I'd have Eulogy 6th overall, followed by Common People 9th. I'd then have Plaything all the way down at 16th, Bête Noire at 21, and Hotel Reverie at 24. I wouldn't say I disliked any of these episodes, but they all have to fall somewhere, and some are going to be lower than others. So what did you think? Did you like this season? Are you still jumping on the Black Mirror train, or are you jumping off? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and what grade you would give every episode and kind of the season as a whole. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more TV recaps and reviews, movie reviews, and so much more right here on The Pop Cultured Life.